Namaskar and welcome to Sansad Television. I am Vishal Dahiya and you're watching our show Perspective, where we bring you detailed analysis of key national and international issues. Today we're going to talk about India-France strategic ties. Now, India and France have close and friendly relations. In 1998, both countries entered into a strategic partnership which is indicative of their convergence of views on a range of international issues apart from close and growing bilateral relationship. Now, this year, both countries are celebrating 25 years of this strategic partnership. It is based on close cooperation in the sectors of defense, civil nuclear energy, space and security, cyber security, counter-terrorism, intelligence, and now also includes a strong Indo-Pacific component as well. Both nations also have important bilateral investments and trade and commercial cooperation, particularly in sectors involving IT corridors, smart cities, railways, capital and trade exchanges, and skill development, etc. France is the 11th largest foreign investor in India. France and India are engaged in constant, detailed dialogue at all levels. During the External Affairs Minister's visit to France in February 2022, both sides adopted the India-France roadmap on blue economy and ocean governance. Recently, Commerce and Industry Minister Piyush Goyal was also addressing in India-France Business Summit and roundtable discussions with CEOs in Paris, where he invited them to take part in New India digital transformation initiatives. Vice President Jagdeep Dhankar interacted with a delegation of young leaders from the France-India Foundation on Thursday and asked them to work together for societal and economic development for the larger benefit of humanity. So before we move ahead, let's listen into what the Vice President had to say on this occasion.
Relations between two countries couldn't have been better. They are stable. They touch every Indian mind. France has been a friend of long standing, and the friendship is valued at all levels, including the people at large. France-India Foundation is a good initiative, and I would strongly advocate it must be on incremental trajectory. We'll be contributing in times to come for global development, global peace, global harmony. Because we have come to know now that there can't be any isolation wealth, isolation growth, isolation happiness, or isolation prosperity. Climate change was one aspect that made us realize that we are one.
There it is. We heard Vice President Jagdeep Dhankar expressing his views on India-France relationship. Let's now introduce our experts, panelists as well for the day or for discussion, more deeper discussions on various aspects of this strategic partnership. We're joined by Professor Gulshan Sachdeva here in the studio from the School of International Studies in JNU. Welcome, Professor Sachdeva. We also have retired Lieutenant General Dr. V.K. Saxena also joining us, Distinguished Fellow at VIF. Welcome to you as well, General Saxena. And Dr. Mohan Kumar, former Ambassador, is also with us, along with Sandeep Agarwal, Chairman of Industry Affairs Committee at PhD Chamber of Commerce. Welcome, both of you gentlemen. Also, I'll begin with you, Professor Sachdeva, and let's start by, trying to understand the basis of India-France bilateral cooperation, which now, since 25 years is a strategic cooperation.
Well, thank you. Today we have roughly about 35 plus strategic partnerships. And France was the first country with whom we actually signed strategic partnership, and all strategic partnership followed. And when we say some trusted friends, trusted partnerships, and I think this is the country which really fits that particular scale, where yes, we have worked in all these areas which you have mentioned. Main pillars are basically your aeronautic industry, space, defense, nuclear, very key areas, and also future areas where we are going to work. We have the International Solar Alliance, which was basically launched together with France. So it means all the green transition ambitions, what we have, France could really be a very important partner. And you mentioned about trade and economics. Now, this is one area where I think we really need to work much harder because we have roughly about, say, 10, 12 billion trade in goods, and maybe if you add another 6, 7 billion trade in services, so roughly about 20 billion trade. And in the last 20 years or so, they have invested about 10 billion US dollars in India. Now, this is much, I mean, the ambition could be much larger than this, but we also have to understand that on certain areas, because France is also a member of the European Union. So it means on certain areas, competencies are with the European Union, and in certain areas, there are bilateral, you can do, certain your own dealings and agreements. As the trade and economics are concerned, we are already negotiating trade and different agreements, both on trade and also investments with the European Union. So once that we are able to kind of conclude those agreements, hopefully that will also affect our area. Ambition can perhaps go much larger. We can have much larger trade and investment in those areas. And there is another area where actually in 2018 we signed agreement, particularly in the migration and mobility. So this is again one area because all the European countries, they are also looking to attract basically, Indian into their countries because, the demographic situation in Europe is not very favorable. But obviously they are looking more skilled labor. And France is also identifying particularly Indian students into the French universities.
Okay.
So it means the scale can be increased. So these are some areas, and we are also, in fact, on the strategically, of course, as you have mentioned, France is also a resident power in the Indo-Pacific, and since Indian foreign policy in the last few years has been dominated by the narrative of Indo-Pacific, and we have, this is one area where we have worked together. So it means the broader, the worldview, the vision, what they have for the, for the world is, you have a democratic world, multipolar world, multicultural world. So this is the kind of world, in fact, I think we have kind of come together.
Okay.
And we have been working together both bilaterally and also within the European Union and also in other forums.
Okay, so both bilaterally as well as regional cooperation and multilateral cooperation as well. We'll go deeper into all these areas, but General Saxena, one more aspect of this strategic partnership is cooperation in defense sector. And that is really, really important and significant to both nations, it looks like.
I will steal the words of what Vice President just mentioned. The relation between these two great democracies could not have been better. In fact, our relations in defense are nothing new. More than 100 years old, when the 19-year-old Victor sailed from Pondicherry to the French territory, he was going to be a part of 1.3 lakh British India and French Indian soldiers who fought on the French land, and half of them never returned. Our relations in defense actually being that time not an independent country but started from there, and our moment of glory came. One of the moment of glory came not only in the war memorial in Pondicherry, which is long back, but a war memorial in French territory in France on 11th November 2018. Our Vice President, that time Mr. Venkaiah Naidu, inaugurated that, commemorating our soldiers. And our Prime Minister Manmohan Singh, then Prime Minister Manmohan Singh, sat very proud at the Bastille Day parade on 14 July 2009 when 400 Indian contingent walked through. Now, those were the historical facts. But coming to the brass tacks, our defense relationship is very, very strong. First of all, this is one of the few countries where we conduct defense exercises very regularly, both by Army, by Navy, by Air Force. Everybody knows these are very famous exercises, exercise Garuda with Air Force, Varuna with Navy, and Shakti with the Army are a major defense exercise in which we learn mutual cooperation, interoperability, sharing the best practices in soldiering, sharing equipment compatibility, and so on. That is just one part. Second part are the institutional forums which exist between India and France on the defense side. Long time back, when the defense relationship after the 1998 Strategic Partnership Agreement, we formed something called the Indo-French Defense Cooperation Agreement. Thereafter, it was a regular meeting of this commission that came up its version came up of Indo-French Research Forum, in which we shared ideas on innovation and research in areas of defense.
Okay.
Then came the HCDC, which is, what is HCDC? High Level Committee on Defense Cooperation. These are all ongoing institutional arrangements, and you are very much aware, as the learned professor just brought out, that the biggest achievement or cooperation is in the maritime field. Indo-Pacific has been identified as one of the areas of great mutual confluence, cooperation, and working together.
Okay.
Why it has come like that? They say that in the Indo-Pacific, these two countries have a mutual interest and the interest at the international level to ensure what? Peace, stability, freedom of navigation, rule of law. All this is a part of the dialogue which takes place. And we have the India-France partnership on blue economy and ocean governance. This is a huge agreement.
You signed in 2022 when External Affairs Minister was announced.
It has 5 pillars. It has a trade pillar to do maritime trade. It has institutional pillar to institutionalize the cooperation in the Indo-Pacific region. It has economic pillar to have a sustainable economy based, blue economy on a sustainable basis. It has infrastructure pillar to build infrastructure shore-based as well as on high seas, and also science and technology.
Okay, so we'll these are the additions which you made, and we'll go deeper into these aspects as well once the show progresses. But let me first bring in Mr. Mohan Kumar also. Mr. Kumar, not only 25 years of strategic partnership, but if I'm not wrong, 75 years of diplomatic relations as well. Now, what do you like to understand, as Professor Sachdeva was saying, that France was one of the first countries with which we entered into a strategic partnership. What changes when the relationship or the partnership goes up to the strategic level, and what has changed in the India-France bilateral relations vis-a-vis the upgradation to strategic partnership level in last 25 years?
Well, I think thank you for having me. In 1998, France was the first country to welcome India's establishment of strategic partnership, because in 1998, it's worth remembering that we were a pariah state just after the conduct of the nuclear tests. There is no Western country which was willing to receive our foreign minister, much less sign a strategic partnership. So I would begin by saying France was the first country, and the credit should go to Jacques Chirac, who clearly told his civil servants that, listen, we cannot afford not to have a relationship. And he used to call India the other Asian giant, the first giant being China, of course. So I would take you back to that time. What has changed, I think, in the period of these 25 years, which was your question, is that I think the existing avenues for cooperation have reached a limit. Whether it is buying weapons from France, for example, Rafale, I think we have to move from a buyer-seller relationship to an investor-investee relationship. So that is the challenge as far as defense is concerned. As far as energy is concerned, we have to move from nuclear energy. Nuclear energy is good, but we have to move to other forms of renewable energy like solar energy. So that is the challenge. As far as the trade is concerned, I agree with my co-panelist, Professor Sachdeva, that this is actually the weakest relationship. We actually do as much trade with Bangladesh as we do with France. And this is not enough between the two countries. So what we need to do is really take the relationship to the next level, which means we have to look at new areas of cooperation. And the new areas of cooperation will be quantum computing, artificial intelligence, solar panels, semiconductors, French investment, strategic sectors in India, etc. I would say that signing of the free trade agreement with the European Union is very important. And I noticed that the Honorable Commerce Minister Piyush Goyal has raised it with his French counterpart. France, Germany, Italy will have a big say on this free trade agreement. I think this free trade agreement with the European Union is extremely important for India because it's going to contain rules for the trade in the 21st century. The existing WTO mechanisms have become redundant and archaic. So those are some of the new things that we have to start building with France. So the challenge is to take the relationship to the next level, and that requires political will. It requires a lot of discussions. You've just seen Macron finish a trip to China. He has made some comments which have gotten him into trouble. We don't have to get involved in that. But I think we have to provide European Union with an alternative to China.
Okay.
It is incumbent on India to do that. They are not going to come looking for you. You will have to make your country an attractive destination for European Union. So those, I think, are some of the challenges, I think, in the relationship. I believe both countries know the challenge. I think the question is finding the political will and the necessary domestic reform that needs to be put in place in India so that the relationship can be taken to the next level.
Okay, fair enough. Looks like economic aspect is a very significant one there when we're talking about this relationship between India and France. And let me bring in another of our panelists here, Mr. Sandeep Agarwal. Mr. Agarwal, when we're talking about this aspect vis-a-vis investment, trade, commercial cooperation, and the Commerce and Industry Minister was recently in Paris addressing the French CEOs out there, asking them to come and invest in India, be a part of the digital journey here. So what kind of prospects do you look forward to in terms of this aspect of the relationship between India and France?
See, when we see that France has been one of the pioneers in providing telecom technologies in India. So one of the first electronic exchanges in India came from France. And China, as all my co-panelists have also said, is one country which has always stood by India. Whenever, be it war, be it peace, they are always standing with us. They are providing us strategic parts. They are providing us nuclear fuel. They are providing us parts for the missiles, which are very important. And especially when there is a disturbance with the nearby countries, that is when you see that who is your friend and who is your foe. So that is important. And as far as the technology is concerned, French companies and France is never hesitant actually to work with India. Now, as far as the business is concerned, only $5 billion export is there from India. But the important thing is that about 500 million is, out of this is electrical equipment exports.
Okay.
So it's value added. It is just not raw materials which are going to France from India. And considering that India 5G and in the railways and in the nuclear sector, as our honorable PM is saying that we are going to be probably the second largest nuclear powered country in the world by 2035. So we see a huge probability of us working with our French counterparts into ensuring that our relationship results in making this about $12 billion trade maybe up to $100 billion in the next 5 years. And we particularly think that because the French in the defense sector, in the submarine, the Scorpion submarine, in the Rafale for the Navy and the Rafale for the military, so there is a huge possibility of Indian companies working with them and making these some parts of these equipment in India. So what the industry today believes is that apart from a few more countries like Japan and US, but the most important partner with us would be and will be France.
Fair enough. The industry seemingly is very positive out there. But Professor Sachdeva, I'd like to seek your inputs on this also. You also, mentioned some of these aspects in your first response. what are the key areas which we should be looking forward to when we are talking about this enhanced economic cooperation as well, trade, investment, commercial opportunities also, and increase that fraction of that amount of trade. As Ambassador Kumar was also referring to that. That is an area which seems to be the weakest link in this entire gamut of strategic relationship.
Well, I mean, I think it's quite clear that, India is one of the fastest growing economy in the world. And we have ambition to grow about 7-8% per year for the next 10-20 years. So obviously there is a huge opportunity here for not just only French companies, but any other, major investor. And it's also clear that if we want to have this kind of growth, we will need investment, we will need technology from outside. And industry has clearly identified certain areas, and Ambassador Mohan Kumar has also mentioned some of those areas. So we can really attract them, and they are keenly looking. And apart from this, the geopolitical environment in Asia and the world is also favoring India. Because, even when President Macron was visiting China, of course, they also have a huge investment and also trade with China, all the European countries, particularly France and Germany. But they are also looking, not just decoupling like what the US and other countries say, but now they've clearly identified de-risking. So de-risking means they want to de-risk from China, they don't want to decouple from China. So obviously China continue to be an important market for them, but at the same time in certain areas, specific areas, particularly in green transition, in certain kind of critical technologies, they would be looking at other countries. So we can really attract those investments here. Okay. But how do we really facilitate? This is what the
that's what's important.
Yeah. So the facilitation is that, at the moment, we do not have any investment agreement because all the bilateral investment treaties have been terminated. We are negotiating a separate investment agreement, but now we are not negotiating with France, but we are negotiating with the European Union because they come together. Similarly, trade agreement. It's not that, just signing a trade agreement or investment agreement or other agreement which we are on geographical indicators, etc. They will immediately transform things. But at the same time, once you have that, immediately then the new momentum will be created. Okay. But at the same time, we also must remember that the history of negotiation with the European Union has not been very, very happy because we started in 2007, the negotiations were frozen in 2013, but luckily when Prime Minister Modi met all 27 leaders, we had the leaders meeting in 21, and then we have restarted negotiations, 4 rounds have already been completed, but I think a lot of work needs to be done. So if you are able to kind of, finish all those negotiations as quickly as possible, but we also must be very clear because when, President Macron was giving 2-3 days back when he was giving a speech at The Hague about European sovereignty, which he talked about, competitiveness and protectionism and also reciprocity, etc. Okay. He also mentioned specifically about what kind of trade agreements they are looking for. Okay. And he mentioned that, EU, New Zealand agreement is as a kind of a, gold standard for them. It means you have to bring sustainability into this. So we have to be prepared in all those negotiations that they are tough negotiations, but if we really feel that they are trusted partners, we want in certain areas, we have to really rework and really work very hard for those negotiations.
So basically enhanced economic cooperation is the way forward when we're talking about taking these ties to the next level. We'll take a very short break here, but on the other side, we'll talk about other aspects of this strategic partnership as well. Stay tuned. Welcome back. You're watching our show Perspective, and today we're talking about India-France strategic ties. Before we went into the break, we discussed at length the basis of these ties, the importance and significance as well, various aspects, and more focus on the economic aspect. Now, let me bring in, General Saxena again here. General Saxena, when we talk about the defense aspect or the most strategic aspect of it, defense you mentioned in detail, but it's not just about defense. Security, cyber security as well, counter-terrorism efforts, and then space sector is also really important nowadays.
Yes. As I said earlier also, that these 5 pillars of strategic relationship, which is civil military cooperation, the defense, the security, and in that cyber security, intelligence sharing, etc., are the pillars in which the cooperation will continue, and it is going on at the present moment, like in the civil nuclear deal. Starting from there, our cooperation with ISRO, the cooperation in the Mars mission, the cooperation or the intended cooperation in removal of debris from the space, and also cooperation in the Gaganyaan of tomorrow. Those similarly in the cybersecurity domain of counter training and the counter-terrorism and cybersecurity, intelligence sharing, training together. But my most important point, which I want to share with you and with the audience, is defense exports.
Okay.
Now, the defense production and export promotion policy issued by government in August 2020 laid down a very ambitious target of 175,000 crores in defense manufacturing, including 35,000 crores in defense exports by 2025. It is a high point in India's export today that we are at 15,920 crores, starting with 1521 crores in 2015. Now we are on an upswing, but still 54% less than what was envisaged in the production and export promotion policy.
Okay.
This is where we should act and make it happen as regards France.
How will that happen? What are the key contours?
Yes, I have two suggestions. Now you are all aware that how the Airbus and Tata agreement for making C-295 transport planes of 46, 16 of them in flyaway condition and 40 of them to be made purely India, with 96% Indian content has been signed and is progressing. We should cooperate, we should negotiate in a manner that this should become a world center, an export center, a manufacturing center for all C-295 platforms for the world.
Okay.
Not only for India, we should not stop at 16 plus 40. We should continue to go ahead and make it happen to export C-295 platform from here. Another idea, another piece of information, we are all aware way back, Mahindra and Airbus have signed an agreement for making advanced helicopters here. That hasn't yet really met the speed and momentum which it was desired. Yes, it is moving forward, that's all right. Make it happen in a manner. You are aware that the Adani Group, Mahindra Defence again, with the BAE system has signed M777 ultra-light howitzer assembly, integration and training as also a place from where they will meet the world demand for this howitzer.
Okay.
So it should make it happen in a big ticket item. All right, we will not export Akash, but we can have many other exportables because they have very advanced missiles. We have many other exportables, as learned Professor Mohan Kumar has brought about semiconductor chips. We are an IT giant of the world. Our semiconductor microchip industry is going. We have Foxconn, we have the Taiwan industry coming up here, and we have our own Bharat Security 1 and Security 2 chips are already in the making. Make sure that this investment in the defense sector grows, not only in weapon system. We have latest guns, we have latest missiles, we have latest ammunition, we have latest semiconductors. Offer it and make it happen and take it to the next level. As Professor was bringing out, take it to the next level. Is defense export is one idea. We can negotiate, we can do policy making, we can sit out on Indo-Pacific, we can have strategic dialogue between our NSA and their NSA. But the buck moves with moving equipment, offering, getting selected and exporting to the world. That is my point.
Okay, let me bring in the industry representative here as well on this part, because that involves industry also. Sandeep, how about putting your views on this issue here in terms of what General Saxena is referring to, that defense exports is also a key area of this relationship. So is our defense private sector up to the mark here on this aspect?
As General Saxena also said, that we were almost zero in exports, 1,500 crores. So basically, that is what we want. And that is what we are going to get. But first things first, we need to actually make sure that Indian demands are met by Indian manufacturing. And when we are doing this, while we are doing this, in each product which we are doing this, I am pretty sure the Indian produce is always cheaper and never of worse quality than what is manufactured in the base country.
Okay.
So when we are cheaper and of the same quality at least, we will be able to actually add value to the French by manufacturing and exporting worldwide. And I think we all agree today that India has to be the manufacturing base because no other country can have that kind of strategic depth and partnership which India and France together can have, or by India with other countries also, but especially here now, France.
Okay. Ambassador Kumar, I'd like to, bring you in on the other aspect of this security paradigm which we're, talking about, that is intelligence sharing, counter-terrorism, cybersecurity as well. How far have we moved vis-a-vis our cooperation with France is concerned, the strategic partnership is concerned? Have we achieved a lot in the last 20, 25 years of the strategic partnership? And then what will be the key areas the key focus areas on these aspects?
No, before I answer that question, if you allow me, people have talked of defense.
Please, go ahead.
I think the most important thing that has happened for India is the Russian war in Ukraine. And we simply don't know the state of Russia when the war ends, if and when the war ends. We are extremely dependent on Russian weapons supplies and platforms. And I think there has got to be an attempt to diversify. France has easily emerged as the second largest defense supplier to India. India, of course, has cooperation with Israel, UK, and United States. But I would envisage an important role for France as the strategic situation in our neighborhood becomes complicated. It's no secret that next week the Chinese defense minister is going to travel to Moscow. Now, if that doesn't worry India, I don't know what will worry India, frankly. So we should be extremely worried about what's going on. And I would bring France into that equation as well. But you're quite right. I think when I was ambassador in Paris, we started the Maritime Security Dialogue. This was the first ever maritime security dialogue between France and India. There is a cyber security dialogue. You're quite right. There is another dialogue that happens, which is the strategic dialogue between the national security advisors of two countries, of both countries, every year. In that particular dialogue, which I've had the honor to attend, we also discuss intelligence sharing. We share threat perceptions, for example. What are the credible terrorist threats that both countries face? I want to tell your viewers that France has also been a victim of terrorism, like India. And the great thing about the French defense and security and intelligence cooperation is, unlike many other countries, France makes it clear to India that they will not compromise by cooperating with Pakistan and others. So we have that assurance from France that whatever we share with them will remain with them. And that is a comfort level and a kind of trust that has been built. But you're quite right. I think I wouldn't say this has happened over the last 25 years, but in the last 10 years, I think we have proceeded quite a bit. We've made great strides in intelligence sharing, maritime security. For example, you have the Fusion Information Center in Gurgaon, which is going to determine the maritime domain awareness in the Indian Ocean. The first foreign naval representative to join Gurgaon was from France. So there is tremendous comfort level between the two countries when it comes to armed forces. We have signed a logistic sharing interoperability agreement between the two armed forces. So that is something that is of use. As the general mentioned, India is a resident, France is a resident power. I've been to Reunion Islands, and there I think we have extremely important assets of France, which India can make use of. An important joint patrolling operation has already been conducted between India and France in the Indian Ocean. I see a lot of future there. So as we look at the strategic situation in India's neighborhood, the Sino-Russian cooperation, the Russian war in Ukraine, and the inability of Russia to supply everything we may need in the next 20, 30 years, I think we have to start looking at countries like France. This is what I'm saying. We have no choice, really. It's not a choice, frankly. In fact, I have made the point that the Russian war in Ukraine diminishes India's strategic space. It complicates our security situation. So I think it's all the more reason we have to look to France to cooperate in these critical areas. One last point, France also supports us in multilateral fora, like the UN Security Council. We are now no longer on the UN Security Council. Our term has finished as a non-permanent member. It is France which actually helps us when it comes to things like listing the terrorists in the UN Security Council committee, taking up the comprehensive international terrorism agreement that is being negotiated in the UN. So very much France is our eyes and ears in the UN Security Council.
Okay, fair enough. Professor Sachdeva, one more aspect of this relationship, all of you have mentioned that earlier. I also pointed it out as to last year in 2022, the India-France roadmap for blue economy and ocean governance was signed. My question is, what are the opportunities when we're talking about blue economy? And then where can both countries cooperate with each other, given that the interests are aligned there?
Well, this is one area where we have been actually talking not just only with France, but with many other countries as well. Because if you feel that, this is area where most of economic activity is going to take place, particularly in the Indo-Pacific region. And what kind, and there is also, there are 2 or 3 things actually are linked with this. One is, of course, the whole world is now moving, they are kind of looking for green transition. And within this green transition, because the kind of model both Europe, India and all other countries are following so far, they are changing. So it means everybody has a different kind of plan, whether net zero, 2050, 40, 60, whatever, and all kind of you have targets set for different years. Now, where we have already working with the with France and all many other countries. Similarly, the major goal, which again we have identified within the Sustainable Development Goals. Now, as a result of pandemic and other disruptions, some of those goals we may not be able to reach by 2030. But there is a possibility that even working together with like-minded partners like like France, already things have been identified that how India and France can work together in certain development projects within the Indo-Pacific region. So it means this is one area again we can so certain technology etc. can come from France, and we can also have our own development experience which can be replicated, particularly in many island states and smaller countries within the Indian Ocean. So what we are seeing that all the major visions what we have, they somehow coincide, because we always thought that yes, I mean some of the European countries, they might be important for us for trade and economics, but beyond that, if you look at our broader strategic kind of concerns within South Asia, Central Asia or West Asia, we never thought that actually we'll be coming closer to some of the European countries, and France is really a clear example where it's not just only they're important for trade and economics, I think they'll continue to be very useful for us. But at the same time, strategic convergence is taking place, and all the new kind of technologies and new kind of areas, because the future is going to be all the green technologies, and there I think I mean Indian companies can work with the French companies, then they can also work in other countries.
Okay, so that's about blue economy and the ocean governance part. General Saxena, you were also earlier mentioning, ensuring the rule of law, freedom of navigation as well. But the question which I want to put to you is the how and why of, in terms of the importance or significance of India-France partnership in Indo-Pacific, and how does it, fit in the Indian interests and Indian, partnership with other countries bilaterally? We have those bilateral cooperations or agreements vis-a-vis Indo-Pacific with several other nations, and at multilateral forums as well, for example, Quad.
Quad is standing at its own strength and at its own place, but India and France is coming together in Indo-Pacific in a number of issues. I will bring to your notice a strategic dialogue called Joint Strategic Vision of Indo-French Joint Strategic Vision for Indian Ocean Region. Now, this itself is a very strong forum which puts forward its views of security, ease of freedom of navigation, rule of law in Indian Ocean region. Now, you must be aware that yesterday, day before yesterday, was a news item of we won a major contract in Bangladesh for establishing a port in Matabari, beating the Chinese to 8. Now, once we diversify our interest in the Indian Ocean region, many new things come up. Now, there is also a trilateral between France, India, and Australia for a strategic dialogue in Indo-Pacific. Now, Indo-Pacific is not only one talking about India-France partnership on blue economy and ocean governance in Indo-Pacific. It is a broader framework, very broad framework. And on the point again, just returning to the point of defense exports again for the audience, there are two major issues, two major companies in France. One is the Thales and other is MBDA. Now, Thales is a very large presence in India in defense and aerospace industry in terms of radars, fire control radars. It is inducting a large number of Indian nationals or Indian personnel. Now, it is entering into make in India and make for India. This is a time for us to crack it, to make it happen in joint ventures by making India manufacturing, as the ambassador was bringing out, make India the manufacturing base for Thales-based equipment, for MBDA-based equipment. That is where it will make in defense. So both your questions, one I added on my own, but Indo-Pacific is a larger format in which France, Australia and India won, and France and India in the Indian Ocean region have their own view and have their own strategic vision and have their own importance, which must be progressed independent of Quad. Quad is fine, but France and India have their own strategic space in Indo-Pacific region.
Okay, and that's where it is really important. Ambassador Kumar, from your perspective, sir, diplomatically speaking, this entire region of Indo-Pacific and Indian policy on that, and when we are talking about these partnerships or these cooperation agreements with countries like France, Australia, Japan as well, independently with the United States of America, and then several cooperation agreements at a multilateral level, regional level in Southeast Asia as well.
Yes, I think there's a lot of convergence between France and India. If you look at the French white paper on India's foreign policy and French foreign policy and France's position in the Indo-Pacific, it's unfortunate we don't have white papers, but the French have a tradition of bringing out white papers. And I've always felt that we can just translate their French into English and it could easily qualify as an Indian paper. For example, they believe in multipolar world. For example, they believe in strategic autonomy. A lot of these concepts actually are underpinnings of the Indian foreign policy as well. For example, we've been making the point that you cannot have a multipolar world unless you have a multipolar Asia first. That is, in other words, you cannot have a hegemonic power in Asia. No prizes for guessing which that hegemonic power is. So these are areas where I think France and India have a similar understanding. But it is true that their relationship with China is different compared to our relationship with China. So we should not fall into the trap of thinking that their relationship with China is exactly the same as our relationship. We share a land border. We have a problem with China, which concerns the border. Ultimately, the boots on the ground are going to come from India. It's not going to come from France. It's not going to come from the United States. It's not going to come from any other country. Subject to that, the issue with Indo-Pacific is, which I have been trying to explain, there is too much investment in the Pacific theater. There is very little investment in the Indian Ocean theater. The Indo-Pacific consists of the Indian Ocean theater and the Pacific theater. Pacific theater, we don't have to worry. The United States continues to be a Western Pacific power. Australia, Japan, they will take care. My worry is about the Indian Ocean because from 2006, and the general will confirm it, from 2006 or 2008, there has been semi-permanent Chinese presence in the Indian Ocean. This is a problem for India because the Chinese tell us it is Indian Ocean, but it is not India's ocean.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying? They say this is not an ocean that belongs to India. It may be called the Indian Ocean, but it is not India's ocean. So I think for us, France becomes important because if you take the Indian Ocean Commission, they have many regional architectural instruments in Indian Ocean. We are cooperating with them in Indian Ocean. The littoral states of the Indian Ocean are important, whether it is Mauritius, Seychelles, and so on. A lot of French-speaking countries are involved. So I would say that taking all this into account, the Indian Ocean aspect of Indo-Pacific, in my view, can be done by India and France much better than, for example, the quadrilateral arrangement that we have, which is India, United States, Australia, and Japan.
Okay. Final, question to you, Mr. Kumar, before we bring this to an end, and that is, since you've been there as India's ambassador, in terms of the people-to-people connect between both the countries, how important is that aspect in the strategic partnership, and where can this be worked upon further?
Terribly important, but my standard line is, I keep telling my North Indian friends that I'm not asking you to learn Tamil, please learn French. Don't tell me it is impossible to learn French. I can understand if you tell me it is impossible to learn Tamil, is a difficult language. So the language continues to be a bit of a problem. 10,000 students is what we have in France. I now teach at OP Jindal Global University. I tell my students, you're making a big mistake all the time going to Canada, United States. Those are all wonderful countries, but please also look at Europe. What is the problem in asking somebody to learn French? It's such a beautiful language. What is the issue when you are 24 years? But our obsession with English is unfortunately taking our students. As far as tourism is concerned, I'm happy to report to you that the most loyal tourists from Europe to India are the French. As India's ambassador, I'm proud to say we used to issue 750 visas a day.
That's a huge number.
Most of those visas were tourist visas. And for them, the most favorite destinations are Rajasthan, Pondicherry, and Kerala. And there is enormous potential for people-to-people ties. The French are excellent at STEM subjects. That is science, technology, engineering, mathematics. As I said, the only barrier is the language barrier. But even that is changing. A number of universities in France, I think they have given up. They used to say that French is as important as English, but I think even the French now realize that English is the language of international business. So there are lots of courses offered in English. I think there needs to be greater awareness among Indians that France is a place where one can go for study. You can go to do STEM subjects, that is science, technology. They call it École Polytechnique, but they are not the polytechnics that we have in India. Exact opposite. École Polytechnique in France is the Indian Institute of Technology. Their levels of engineering and technology are extremely high, but that is not known enough in India. So the potential for people-to-people ties is enormous.
Okay, there it is. Thank you so much, Mr. Kumar. Sandeep Agarwal as well, General Saxena, and Professor Sachdeva for sharing your views and insight with us and our viewers. As all our experts were pointing out clearly, there is a lot to India-France strategic partnership, various aspects. It's not just about defense and security or cyber security or intelligence sharing, but also economic and trade ties, people-to-people connect as well, and various other areas, various other sectors where both countries are cooperating with each other. A lot of potential to move further ahead. We will keep a close watch on all these developments on this front and keep on bringing you detailed analysis of other key issues as well. Till then, keep watching Sansad Television. Thank you.